Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning and Zoning. It is November 10th, 2015. As you can see, it's being recorded. Just to make note, we have 3 members from the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Mark Richards. I'm a member. George Brewer is also a member. And we have Bert. How do I pronounce your name? Schmidt.
You forgot my name already?
I mispronounce it all the time.
I know, Schmidt.
Schmidt. Okay, we also have Dylan Walter. Dylan is an elected member to the ZBA, but he is not sworn in. So we have 3 out of 5 members here, and I'm going to turn it over. Oh, and Don Morelli, I'm sorry, Don Morelli is here as an alternate with the P&Z, so ZBA, excuse me, so we do have 4 members here, 4 members. I'll turn it over to Ellen.
Yeah, and we have 7 members there, so we have a quorum also. So it's officially a meeting, a joint meeting.
Joint meeting, special meeting this evening. It's only informational, no votes can be taken. We have with us this evening a member of the DEP who is going to outline to us the discussions he's been having with the Water Pollution Control Commission, who is also here this evening, and we'll have a meeting at 7 o'clock. Can I outline everything properly?
As far as I can tell.
Okay, great.
Did Carol elaborate on what she wanted you to speak to us about?
Well, when I get the floor, I'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we should call you to the head of the table here.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. It's been a long week. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dennis Greci. I'm a supervisor with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and I've been working on this project since 1987. So you got a little history there. And as was already mentioned, I'm here officially to meet with the WPCA at 7 o'clock. I got a call from somebody in one of the other sections of DEEP. They said, there's a couple people from planning that had some questions and they wonder if there's some time we could meet with them. I said, well, I'm going down there on Tuesday anyways. I can come down a little bit early and meet with, and I expected it to be 1 or 2 people. I didn't expect full boards to be showing up. But having said that, basically it was questions of how did this all happen? I guess there was some questions about why this area, why that area. Is that really where your questions were coming from? So I honestly don't know. I can answer as much as I can remember, which is a long time at this point, but fire away.
I spoke to Carol a while ago, and we discussed some of the issues we were having in planning and zoning. With the documents she sends in with an application, she usually outlines some concerns she has with possible developments, but she doesn't give us any teeth as to what we're supposed to do with it. And also the commission, it's not our forte, it's not what our knowledge base is. What are we ultimately, how are we supposed to come to a decision when we don't know what ultimately the problems are without going to WPCC for applications? So that, something along the lines of the Planning and Zoning Commission could understand the process and how it's reflected in our regulations and approving or denying applications.
That sounds like about 5 hours worth of answer. It's an awfully broad set of questions. I'll hold on to that for a second and if you had something.
No, I think what she said was close. I mean, I just think it'd be better maybe some broader context.
Okay.
Timelines. You don't have to go back 13 years or 23 years, but kind of like timelines, where you think we are, where we should be,
Okay.
what our options are.
All right, let's do a little historical context. So, you've been studying, I'm going to walk around because I've been sitting all day, so don't mind. Plus sitting an hour in the car on 95 is just driving me nuts. You've been doing this work in one form or another since, I'm going to drive the cameraman, that's too since the 70s. I've got reports on my desk, or actually got in files now, that document study after study after study. And you can see the current planning study is up here with the study areas. These have evolved over time, depending on whether you look at the 1970 Malcolm Purdy report, the 1980s Fuss and O'Neill reports, the other reports that came in between those, and then all the CDM reports that follow. These areas have shifted back and forth based on needs, based on evaluations, capacities, a variety of different issues. Short version is you've got dense property, or dense development here. Lots of properties, very small lots. Questions about whether or not there's adequate on-site treatment. Nothing unusual here. It's the same in Westbrook and Saybrook and going that way as well. You've got problems up in Long Hill as well, where you've got some pretty bad soils. Lovely place to live until you flush the toilet and the water doesn't quite make it into the ground all the time. It's true, it's what happened. It's a very tough soil to deal with. You've been through all these studies for years and years. We are nearing completion, I hope, of a study that can be adopted and a project that can be implemented by the WPCA and ultimately by the town. Within that, and I don't want to take away all of the WPCA's or WPCC's story there, but basically, you're looking at providing sanitary sewers for here, and I don't have, there's a small part here that we're still considering. And you're looking at a community system solution. Now, let me take you back and tell you what options exist in the world. In the 1980s, your first option was, that I have a big report on, was to drive them over to the Hammonasset. The first time it went through, didn't go through so well, actually it failed, in part because the technology was something unproven. It was what's called a step system. It's an unusual, it's usable, but unusual for Connecticut system. The citizens here voted it down. A year later, you joined in with the other two towns, Westbrook and Saybrook, and said, well, let's just build one big pipe with a treatment plant in Saybrook, and everyone will be happy. You guys loved the idea, Westbrook liked the idea, Saybrook said, no thank you. I spent the next 7 years in court with Old Saybrook and basically put both you and Westbrook on hold till we can find out what's going to happen in court. The court wound up saying, everybody solved their own problems. That was back into me working with you directly you hired CDM at the time, now CDM Smith, to begin re-looking at the whole situation here. Everyone else went off on their own. But we'll talk about that some other time if you need to. I don't think you need to. Your choices still exist as the Hammonasset, technically a Class B water body, very unpopular with a lot of your citizens. They don't want to discharge there. It is technically a feasible option. And what I've said at the prior meetings, and these are on YouTube as I was advised by my daughters, yeah, separate story there. We've talked about that. If you fail to do anything else, my bottom line is you'll build something to the Hammonasset. Nobody wants that at this point. Your consultants have spent several years combing all of these properties in town. And again, if you stick around at 7 o'clock, Christy will be here, she'll be able to give you more details on this. But basically, they're going to come forward with a proposal to construct several community systems. So these are large systems where you can treat the wastewater, bring it to that site, and have it percolate back into the ground with no overflows, no sheet flow across the land. Basically, stay in the ground and basically be renovated the rest of the way by Mother Nature, just the way rainwater and everything else goes. So that's where you are right now. The challenge that I've heard from your boards before at these previous meetings is, well, that's great. You're solving our problems and you're spending a lot of our tax money. You're spending it, I'm just making you spend it. But we've got more needs than just environmental needs. We've got economic needs as well. Now, what I've stated in the past, and it's still true, if you've got enough additional capacity in the sites that you're talking about moving this wastewater to, I don't have a problem with your board working with the WPCC and coming up with additional sewers and whatever that would provide you some economic growth. But I will not sacrifice environmental protection in lieu of economic growth. We have to solve your problems first. So addressing the wastewater problems that have been identified in this and other reports is your first priority. If there's room left over, certainly no problem these days with saying, sure, we've got an extra fill in the blank 1,000 gallons. We can allocate that to economic growth or other town needs as the town sees fit. But you got to solve the problem first. Okay, so that's really the short version. I did give that speech a couple of years ago. I know not all of you were here. And sometimes, let's face it, things do change as we move further and further along in time. So that's the short answer. What can I offer in more detail? What didn't I cover?
In the 20 years since the heading towards the hand and acid solution, how much has technology advanced on the treatment plant to go there versus the last 25 years of, we call it stuck tier treatment?
My initial instinct is to say not an awful lot. The processes don't change dramatically. There are always new toys. I mean, you could look at the cars of today and say, well, 20 years ago, yeah, they still got you the same place. They use a little bit better gas mileage now than then. Got a few new toys on it, but ultimately they get you the same place. The same is true of wastewater treatment. What has changed over time is the effluent limits that we have to write in our permits are beginning to be crunched down more. So you've got more stringent nitrogen limits than you ever had. Other towns, and I don't think you would be one of them because this is a tidal water, are looking at phosphorus limits now. So it's not so much the technology is changing, it's that the level of necessary treatment is changing to protect the environment because we become more aware of things that are injurious. In the next 10 years, you can read most of the journals and you can come up with this anyways, the next things are going to be pharmaceuticals and metals. Those are what we're going to be focusing on in the next 10 to 15 years. And you'll start hearing about that probably 2020, somewhere in that range. You'll start hearing the discussion is more and more vocal. Right now, if you were watching the legislature last year, you saw they put up, basically there's a heavy-duty evaluation on microbeads, which is one of the more obvious ones that some states are already banning. We're doing studies on it right now to decide what we're going to do. That's the leading edge of the whole pharmaceutical issue. So, technology, in terms of treatment plants, that's a that's.
What about smaller systems that say Clinton might be suggesting?
All right.
That technology.
No, I understand what you're asking. What I'm just trying to phrase it as easy as possible. Whether you're dealing with the septic system in your backyard or the Hartford MDC, which is the largest plant in the state, the processes are still the same. You've got your septic tank, Hartford's primary treatment system. Basically, settles out heavy solids, floats scum and sludge to the surface. The water moves through to a secondary set. Biological treatment occurs there. It occurs in your home and your leaching system. It occurs up there in bigger tanks. Disinfection, if you've got proper separating distance between the bottom of your leaching system and groundwater or other impermeable layer, rock, you'll get disinfection as well. Up in Hartford, chlorine or ultraviolet light. The nuances there, Hartford's also treating for nitrogen right now. So they play around a little bit more with the biology. You're not doing that in your septic systems right now, nor do you need to yet. Will it be mandatory someday? I don't know, I can't predict that at this point.
Hi, you described the problem as adequate on-site treatment. What is the standard for code? What actually are the specifics in terms of limits or whatever?
Okay.
What is the code that you are
What we
trying to
have
realize?
in Connecticut is what's called a prescriptive code. It basically lays out, it's in the public health code, and I can't just rattle it off for you, unfortunately, because I don't memorize that part. That's done by your sanitary and your state health. Basically, it says
The state health code.
state health. So you'd have, a septic tank of a certain size, depending on how many bedrooms you've got, and then a leaching system of a certain size, again, based on the bedrooms and the type of soils you've got. So if you take a look in the health code, you can read and say, okay, I've got a 4-bedroom home, I need this size septic tank, I need this much leaching system because I've got soils at this rate. It's very prescriptive, it's very plug and play.
We've been told that the DEP code and the Connecticut State Health Code are not in sync.
That's correct.
So
Because
whose
health
code are
code,
we supposed to comply to?
if you're dealing with an on-site system or a system under 5,000 gallons a day, you deal with the public health code.
Under 5,000 gallons a day,
Right.
public health code. That
Over
is-
5,000,
Okay.
you're dealing with DEP, or DEP, excuse me, I'm old enough that I still call myself.
It's hard to
I try to stutter so you hear both
No,
these,
it's
but it
hard to
doesn't work.
say.
I work for DEEP. And given the group I work in, you don't have to go the other half of that one. So I just said. Deep's code is not prescriptive. It's technical and site-specific. So we're much more stringent. You'd find that out if you took a look at any of the condos you dealt with, Clinton Commons, any of the big shopping centers in this area, all have codes from borough codes, all have permits from us.
Because they're more than 5,000.
Because they're more than 5,000, and it's much more difficult to get that permit. It requires a lot of work, it requires a lot of testing. It's designed, has to be designed by an engineer, whereas your on-site system, an installer can install that most of the time.
I'm in real estate, most of our systems, our new systems are designed, our engineered systems.
Okay, so I don't have to explain that as much to you, but the rest of you want. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So the standards have changed, and you've got something that was compliant under a former standard. The standard change, what does that, then do you now have to upgrade to some, or will you at some?
Okay, let's take a couple steps back. You're not out of compliance because the standards changed. You're out of compliance because what was installed was never in code anyways. Because at some point, there wasn't a code. A lot of this was done, and especially your shoreline, because, well, it was seasonal homes. People weren't paying a lot of attention to it when they were initially built. They were easy to put in. You're only going to be there a few weekends during the summer anyways. After all, who's going to come to the shoreline? It's all farmland. Yeah, I go back that far, that I have the records for that. So a lot of simple stuff got put in. It wasn't ever put in with the thought that we're going to live here 365 days a year, or even have an intense use for 3 or 4 months. Plus, water use has changed over time. The showering outside, well, maybe we'll just go down for the weekend and we're not going to do a big load of dishes and 3 or 4 loads of laundry. These systems were never designed for full-time use to begin with. So once they start having full-time use, your system's not the proper size anymore. The other issue here is, the Long Hill area looked like it would work at the time. I can't give you all the gory details on why it was designed and built at the size it is.
There were no zoning regulations at the time.
Okay. I'll defer to the gentleman who's got a few years on me for that one. Only a couple, Hal. Only a couple. But yeah, times have changed, and what we understand has changed as well.
Well, I guess the other question would be on new development, where, we get CRAD to approve it. They say it's fine, it's under 5,000. The developer's gone to great lengths to keep it under 5,000. And yet we have things that may have been approved in some former life. How do we know that what we're building now is not going to come back to haunt us with DEP?
That's one of those $50 million questions. I don't have a good answer for you on that. I can tell you that we're building, or required to be built, the best we know right now to meet the needs we have right now. Can I tell you 20 years from now it's going to be sufficient? No, because I don't know what's going to change. As I said, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, the concept of building nitrogen treatment was, we don't need that yet. And then we had the Long Island Sound studies come into place, and all of a sudden it's like, well, almost every treatment plant in the state has to treat for nitrogen. 10 years ago, we were still iffy about phosphorus. 5 years ago, we started issuing the first phosphorus permits. And that's a huge change. Up until that point, we didn't even know what levels of treatment we were going to need to meet the needs of water quality. So there's no guarantee. As much as I would love to offer you one, there is no guarantees.
The question is, who has ultimate authority? And what happens on our board a lot is we have all this discussion about septic systems. My personal belief is we shouldn't even be asking questions about septic systems. We should be asking, has this been approved by, and then my question is, DEP or the Connecticut River Health District. At what point should we, as our boards and commission of land use, be stepping into the conversation?
And can I add to it as well? Because this is the same question I was going to ask. What typically happens is we'll get an application and CRAD will approve it, but they'll put in a subnote saying you really shouldn't be doing this in this area, but it doesn't have any teeth to it. It's not saying you absolutely can't, because it's in a needs area, because the on-site can take place there, but the larger area is a problem.
Even though, and then even though somebody has already signed off on it.
I'm assuming that the caveat that Brad is putting in is, we're approving this to work today, but there's no guarantee that tomorrow you won't be told to move off-site.
I think that's the office of Long Island Sound who normally writes that letter, Christine.
It's Carol-
It said-
Carol's the man.
Carol writes that
Carol's the
letter,
man.
it said, we don't know what's gonna happen in the future.
Right.
We don't recommend it, but in a sense, it says we don't have the authority. Correct.
It's a boilerplate letter. We've heard it over and over.
No, and I understand why it would be written, is to put you on notice that what you put in today may not be enough for tomorrow, because we don't have this report finished yet. We don't know what the recommendations are definitely going to be, and your town hasn't adopted the report and basically funded the project. So until that time, there's absolutely no guarantees. And the health department can't just sign off on it. They can't waive the needs. They could if you had a sewer project in the wings. They literally have, and I think it's down to only 1 year now. If sewers are coming within a year, it used to be 5 years once upon a time. They could say, just make sure it doesn't blow out of the ground, and you can stay where you are, restrict your use of it until the sewers come in. I think that's down to a single year now.
But if we have DEP signing off on it, and we have Connecticut River Health District signing off on it, and we have a letter, like we just talked about, and we're a regulatory commission, I mean, for me, the letter is concerning, but I feel like, what am I going to do? I have this, I can't deny it.
Understood.
I'm not the one who figures out if the septic system is compliant or not.
Now, are we talking new development or are we talking repairs?
Repairs,
It
anything.
could be anything. A lot of times it's a new development.
There's a bit of a
Code
difference.
compliant.
New development, yeah, that's a tough word to play around with sometimes. Believe me, it sticks in our mouths. Let me explain why. On new development, CRAD and any other sanitarian in the state is going to hold you to the full code. No question about it. You're going to build everything to code at that point. Now, even if you're in a study area, that they may still give you the caveat that, well, a few years sewers are going to be running by, we can't guarantee you won't have to tie in, because they don't have that authority. On a repair or an upgrade, anything that's happening in these colored areas, the health department's authority is limited to having you fix it as best you can on the site. Even if it's only to 30% of code, they will have you do the best you can. The health department, to my knowledge, is not going to kick anybody out of their home unless there's something truly egregious happening. And they're not going to make you spend exorbitant amounts of money. Again, that's up to them to decide, not me, but my experience with them all across the state in the past has been, they're not going to put somebody in the poorhouse just to fix the septic system. They'll do the best they can within the limits of what that person can afford and can manage on site. And that's all they're limited to. Even if 6 of their neighbors have the same failure, they have no authority to cross the property boundaries. They're limited intentionally by that so that they focus on the exact problem at the moment. Your WPCC, and coming up to my office as well, has a broader perspective. We have to look at communities rather than individual properties. So where 3 or 4 individual properties might be healthy here, we look at this as a whole and say, there's a community pollution problem because the evidence says these systems are well below the standards that are necessary to treat wastewater properly.
And what evidence is that?
I'm sorry, say it again.
What evidence is that?
The evidence we use at that point is if we've got reports from the sanitarian, if we've got evidence from any water sampling, if we simply...
Sound or groundwater?
Can be anywhere. There's a whole host of different pieces of information that come into play. The lot sizes, the usage, everything comes into factor, and we look at it all together and say, community pollution problem.
I think what I
Yeah.
keep looking for is actually in writing what that is. What level of nitrogen, what level of
Okay.
phosphorus, what purity of water,
I will tell
what
you-
that is in concrete.
You will never
Because
find
people are
it.
spending $30,000 on engineered systems right now.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I just had an engineered system put in.
Being
Are you
told
in one of the
that
study
there's
areas?
code.
No, I'm off of Grove Hill Road, that area. Glenwood, Grove Hill. I had
So
an engineered system.
you had a code system put in.
Yep,
And-
engineered, Mantis, the whole, whole bit engineered, they put me through hell. I mean, you know,
The crab?
yeah, and, because I built an addition, so it was, that was the problem.
That
So-
triggers everything, yeah.
Yeah, and then it went from the town to the New River District. So they held my feet to the fire, but, it's an engineer system, so it costs a lot of money to put it
Yes,
in.
it does.
So, what I'm asking if that area is that area, in other words, the money we spent in that area, a lot of people put in that area. Do we have to hook up? If there is is
See the
that?
gentleman sitting in front of you? He gets to answer that question. I don't. Quite honestly. that's
So
not facetious.
if you spent that kind of money, you exempt from the hookup?
That is up to the individual water pollution control authority in the town. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. That is a call they get to make. That's not the call made at my office.
Yes.
There's lots of ways to approach it.
Yes, question. We are, P&Z is looking at the proposal in the next year or two, that comes up the next month or two. An old site at Morgan High School. Very intensive use between residential and commercial, and plan for a mini treatment plant to meet all the codes. It's going to be obviously, it's going to be a system. We talk about potable water. And then they said, well, you can't send that potable water into the Indian River. Can you tell us a little background why you can't send potable water into the Indian River?
Is it also because it's on the aquifer though?
Okay, there's
That aquifer's north of it.
This
Going south.
is a two-part answer, okay? In your specific case, the Indian River is considered a Class A water body. It has no surface water discharges to it today. To allow a discharge to it at this point would violate the Clean Water Act. EPA would be all over us because it's called backsliding. We cannot downgrade any water body and say, well, we're going to use it all of a sudden, if there's any feasible alternative. And there are feasible alternatives.
Even the term potable water means
Okay.
fit for human consumption.
That's the other part of the quandary. Now, in this case, I don't think you've got the problem, but I will tell you there are places in the state, usually on the western side of the state, where what comes out of the tap is not discharging because of high metals. I know, it seems absurd on the surface, but the way the toxicity issues are, if it's got copper, zinc, lead, at higher than certain levels, you and I are capable of absorbing that because we're large organisms, but the stuff in the streams is not available, not capable of handling that. And literally, these towns are having to go and treat water to clearer than potable. So that's why I said there's two different types of questions here. I don't think that's the case here. I think this is just the water quality standards that you're running up against. But be aware, my life gets stranger by the minute when we have to deal with stuff like that. And I scratched my head for quite a while, especially when in one case I was discharging to something called Copper Mine Brook. And they wanted us to treat for copper, and I said, you gotta be kidding me, really? I said, yep, that's what the numbers say. So,
But it's my understanding that we can have discharged from the Hammonasset because, to the Hammonasset, because historically there have been discharges there, so it's a different class of...
the Hammonasset is a water quality class B or SB, depending on where you are, because you had Bostitch that had an indirect discharge, and upstream you've got several old landfills. As you go further up, if you looked at one of our old waste source maps, you'd find them all there. And those were all considered to be impacting the river at one time, and so the river was classified, and this is back in the 70s as well, as Class B from that point down. That meant that it was suitable for a discharge.
So in other words, if the discharge from this site over by the Indian River could be pumped all the way to the Hammonasset, assuming you could overcome the emotional problems with discharging into the Hammonasset, that would be...
It would be technically and legally permissible, yes. Just very expensive.
Well, because we'd have to go all the way
Yeah,
across
and
town.
pipe costs money, and so does the energy to move the water.
Right.
That's what makes it hard. Otherwise, we pipe it all up to Hartford and be done with it.
So theoretically, just playing the other side of this, more highly density communities that get developed would have less of an impact on our water pollution because not only, it'd be granted more people in one area, but they would have the state-of-the-art
State-of-the-art
system and up to code. Rather, I mean, I still work on houses that have cesspools.
Yeah, I know this is.
So we have Roman technology. I'm not even being funny.
Which works better than direct discharges, that's,
Right,
let's
and then,
be fair.
you know, just when we're looking at applications, you know, I always think that somebody putting in the state-of-the-art system is much better than the alternative, which is what?
Provided it's adequately designed, installed, operated, and maintained. Design, the guy who's designing it has to know what he or she is doing. Installed, the installer, the same thing, and your inspector on top of that. Operated means you gotta pump out the septic tank every few years. Or operated, maintained, you gotta pump out the septic tank. Operated, you gotta not put stuff down the drains that'll kill the system.
Agreed, but
All
zoning,
those variables.
but zoning has
I- I-
control, zoning has control over none of that.
Correct.
They do have the regulation every 5 years, you have to have it pumped and that.
That's not zoning, that's a health district.
No, no, it's a
That's
town.
water pollution.
That's your
regulated.
That's our
PZC.
Right, that's not our code. What I'm trying to get at is zoning, everything I look at, this really is not, we have no teeth into this issue
Right.
at all, from top to bottom.
To a certain extent, you're not supposed to. That's why you have this commission to do that.
So that brings me to the question of whether or not, we had discussed briefly whether or not we should have some sort of processes in place where WPCC officially reviews application. I mean, nobody wants to see added layers, but we're not addressing the problems. Recently, we took one of those needs areas and rezoned it for more density. We got the trigger letter saying you shouldn't do this. But, you know, our hands are not tied essentially, but it went forward anyway.
Plus for a second here, for time. I don't want to intrude on the
It's 15 minutes.
Okay, you got 15 minutes left. I'm going to answer your question with a question back. I work for the government, that's what we do. Are you aware of the legislation that changed this past year? That requires you guys, when you do your next plan of development, to talk to them.
We have.
You've seen that one, right?
We have done that. We talked
Okay.
to them.
And it doesn't say anything.
I won't comment on what our legislators write because that's outside my purview. But, I mean, that's part of an attempt to cross that bridge, or to make the bridge more sturdy, basically to get the different boards talking back and forth. I sort of have some background on why it was done, and I know what they were complaining about at the time. Whether the legislation actually did what they had hoped to, I don't know. I guess
But
we'll find out.
without having any specific regulation or processes in place where it triggers an automatic review by WPC, there's nothing planning and zoning can do, and there's nothing WPCC can do ultimately.
Right. Well, they're not responsible for planning and zoning issues. They're responsible for solving the water pollution problems and managing the systems that get installed. That's their two tasks. Providing proper zoning and, you know, what the other parts of the land use are, that's for you guys to do.
So to boil this down, under 5,000 gallons a day is the state code, but the Water Pollution Control Commission is the god in terms of what would be acceptable or not. They have final say. Is that, am I clear on that?
No, I don't think that's correct.
If you're in one of these areas.
If you're in one of these areas, they could obviate the need to put in any septic system by saying, we are going to make this into a sewer service area.
So code compliant, engineered,
Would be irrelevant.
$50,000, forget about it.
Could be, not would be, could be.
Could be.
And-
No, but I'm just trying to find out, they're the final authority.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, there is, and I'm gonna, again, trying to avoid stepping on milestones on some of this and some of this. Most towns, actually all towns at this point, that have sewers, have what's called a sewer ordinance. It's a standard document. If you look at it carefully, the way that the towns get around dealing with that issue, or actually dealing with that issue with that, is there's a clause in there that says, within 90 days of official notice to do so, homeowner ABC has to tie into the sewer, once a sewer is built. What the town officials have found as a bypass to the mandatory tie-in policy is they simply do not notify a person who's just had their system built. Because there is guaranteed no matter when you build a sewer system, there's always somebody who just built their septic system. They just spent a lot of money fixing it. So what the town officials in many towns have done is say, you know what? If it's less than 3 years old, 2 years old, whatever, we're never going to send them that notice until the system fails or until they want to tie in themselves.
Well, there's also
It's a very easy way out.
From the saying we're going to do the sewers, it could be 10 years before they've dug the hole in the ground.
Absolutely.
So wouldn't you want a more code compliant thing that is immediately there as a DEP person
And
caring about the environment,
Right.
than hoping in 10 years somebody will hook up?
And that's why the health code only has a very limited leeway time. You know, if sewers are going to be installed within X number of, I think it's 1 year now. Used to be, like I said, it used to be 5 years. Now it's within 1 year of,
Towns can do that in 1 year?
no. The health code says if you're going to have sewers in a year or less,
Yeah.
we won't make you do the repair. If it's more than a year, the repair has to go through.
Dennis, years ago, the DEP discussed a dual piping system for homes. We take the showers, the sinks are going to be, get rid of that water. The johns would go to a septic
Gray water and
system.
black water.
Right. That was never implemented. For new construction, I realize.
Yeah, it proved cumbersome at best. A lot of the builders were really not interested. I don't know all the gory details behind it, but I know it got discussed and ultimately fell by the wayside. So I don't know all the history behind
Would
it.
that solve much of the problem? Because the problem is the water. I mean, residential looking at is the water issue.
Some places yes, some places no. I would tell you definitely not up in Long Hill, because the whole point is the soil isn't taking the water to begin with. It's a hard time getting the water back into the soil and keeping it there long enough to treat. Along the shoreline, I'm not sure you get much either at that point, because you still, even though gray water is considered, less contaminated, it's still showers, it's still laundry, and there's bacteria in there, and there's nitrates in there. So how much do you gain by that? I'm not sure it gains enough, and that may have been the other
You have
reason.
a 21-day travel time now for general
Or in large systems.
system. What would a, say, dual system if you had gray water?
I don't have that.
Did we ever discuss that?
And again, 21 days only for deep systems,
Over 5,000.
over 5,000. Under that is under the prescriptive. Okay, sort of we're on the first part of the discussion here. Got how many minutes left, sir?
2 hours.
11 minutes, or Hal has to call his meeting into order.
I'm out of here.
Other questions I can help you with?
Well, you started off by saying that the final, the final, I don't know, if the commission does not act, that you would step in and that you would probably then prescribe a system that did indeed discharge to the Hammonasset. And at that point, you would be beyond the ability of the local population to object.
Depending on how far it goes, yes. Legally, we give you the order. If you fail to comply with the order, we can take you into court and enforce the issue. That has happened a couple times, so I know it's doable. But if you know you're going to go down that path, why pay for attorneys and 3 years worth of delays?
But at that point, are you going to have Madison and Clinton with you in court anyway, and it's going to be another 20 years before that gets settled?
I'd love to answer that question, but the camera's on. Let me put it a different way. And this is probably, as I said, I've been doing this for 36 years. I'm retiring in the spring. In a few minutes, my replacement, one of my staff, is going to walk through the door. I'm basically the one who's been covering the shoreline. There's only one of me. And the staff levels are reducing. We work on communities and we already have a foot in the door for whatever reason. Am I talking with Madison and Guilford? Yeah. Do I expect us to be over there anytime soon? Unless they call us and say we need to do something now? Probably not. I wish I could, but there's basically only one of me, and I've been covering the eastern half of the state for God knows how long now.
So, we're mentioning about discharges in the Hammonasset River possibly. What ramifications, guarantees, penalties would happen being a man-made error? I've seen the Mattabasset dump 21 million gallons of raw sewage in Weathersfield Cove. I've seen a Deep River treatment plant washed down with fire hydrants into the Connecticut River. The New Haven treatment plant has storm sewers directly going into their treatment plant.
It's called the mine sewer system.
And nothing happens to them. Why don't you go out
There's
there?
things happening, you just don't see it.
That's been going on for years.
Well, let's see, working backwards, the New Haven system is under a consent order, and they're spending between $50 and $100
Well,
million.
that's great, it's about time. But how about the one in Mattabasset?
Okay,
21 million
you got the two
gallons.
systems
Nothing
confused.
happened. Nothing happened.
Mattabasset is not the one on Weathersfield Cove, that's a Hartford MDC, and they are under.
I'm sorry, it's right, it's MDC.
They've got a I forget what the number is now, it used to be 2.2, but I think it's now down to $1.6 billion project.
Well, but I'm just saying, nothing happens.
We don't see it happening, we know it's happening because we're funding portions.
I understand, but at the time, nothing, there was no
Right, but-
notifications.
No, I understand that, you know.
And Deep
you're
River
expecting
went
the big slab.
right down into the river. I've seen it twice. With fire hydrants, washing it down the blacktop.
What are they washing down?
It's overflow from the treatment plant.
That I hadn't heard about, that I'd have to look into.
Well, I think the fear is this, that, okay,
You're not gonna hear about it.
something might happen, but I think the fear of the Hammonasset River is, okay, if that water's going out and it's treated, it's great. But at some point over the next 50 years, it seems like there's a failure.
Absolutely.
And when that failure comes, is the risk of the failure greater or less than keeping the status quo or building the other systems?
Is it better than the status quo? My instinct would be to say no, because you've got substandard issues going on right here, and they're going to get worse with time. Is it better to put it in the river than to put it into some upland treatment systems? No, I think the upland treatment systems are a better choice. They certainly have the added ability, if something goes wrong, the worst case scenarios, you've still got Mother Nature and acres of land to provide additional treatment. So yes, it's better to go here than here, but we can't force you to acquire the properties you need. You have to do that on your own. We can force you to go to a surface water.
So your two biggest issues are NIMBY, not in my backyard,
Absolutely.
and I don't want to pay for it.
And the third one is capacity. The fact that when we've looked at these inland places to discharge, that there are a limited number of them. Many of the possible ones have been ruled out.
Exactly.
And that, you know, part of what some of us are thinking is, well, okay, this solves the problems for the specific needs areas that we have today, but it provides no capacity going forward. And we have, as you started off saying, an economic development problem as well as the emergency that is facing us now today. And if we use up all of the upland capacity with the mess we've already made, we have no further place to go.
Was there a question there? Because it sounded like you did a good statement of what the issue was.
No, I just wasn't asking a question. My question is, am I wrong?
No, I think you stated it very well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there's a related problem, is that our solution to the problem areas will receive partial state funding. What we build for future capacity, unless it's into the existing areas, will not receive that funding.
If you build it in the future, that's correct. If you build it today, so let's just postulate for a moment. Let's say you build one of these systems and go to someplace up here. If you build that today, and let's say you've got 80,000 gallons of demand for existing problems, and it's got 100,000 gallons of capacity, we're going to approve the 100,000 gallon design, and you'll get a 25% grant, 50% loan on that, the whole thing. If you come back in 3 to 5 years and say, gee, you know, we need more capacity, but it's just for economic growth, we're going to pat you on the head and say, gee, sorry, not our job. So if you do it all at once, you get the funding. If you come back later on, we
we can't help because our job, our call under the statutes is environmental protection. We're allowed to let some economic growth into that package when you're designing and building it, but you can't come back just a few years later and say, well, we'd like more economic growth. Because that's wrong.
So the challenge becomes having the capacity that we find of these pieces of land in town be higher than what the needs are. And that's the only way we can make a delta for you guys. So everyone ought to be, patting their WPCC friend on the back and trying to figure out a way to make this work.
The challenge
We're
is
working extremely hard to make it happen.
Yeah, the challenge is for all of you to work together and come up with a solution that says, here we're solving our needs, in environmental needs. Here we're solving our economic needs. Can we do it together in an affordable package? That's really the challenge at the end of the day.
The big challenge is, the problem with this system, and I hear it day in and day out, is I don't live on Long Hill, why am I paying for their septic?
Well, that's what we're going to be discussing in just a few minutes, because WPCC wants me down here to talk about finances.
We gotta get Dennis at least a few minutes off before I call the meeting to order.
That's okay.
So,
That's why I got the water in hand.
Can I ask just for a quick, just to let everybody, just a quick summary, because this is something, the reason that we really wanted to have a conversation was to deal with the letters that we received that don't give us any teeth. So just a summary, planning and zoning should continue what we're doing until DEEP or CRAD says you absolutely cannot put a system in that place. If we can work with WPCC to try to come up with, I don't know if it would be a regulation, but to try to have some sort of percentage higher in terms of putting in systems to allow for some growth or failure, that would be ideal.
I don't think statutorily we're going to be allowed to do that.
Yeah. So just hold on for a few months. I think we're pretty close to the end of this report at this point, and you should have something in hand that will be able to say, yes, here's what we've got. So let's wait till about the time I retire. Oh, sorry. Bad Dennis. A few more months, we should have that report hopefully in hand. Your Water Pollution Control Commission will be able to have a reasonable feel for what they need. They'll have a reasonable feel for what the capacity of the systems that they're going to try and design and build are, and they'll be able to tell you what they've got available.
When you illustrated that, providing a little bit of extra capacity a few minutes ago in the state funding, the numbers you used were, let's say you need 80,000 gallons and you decide to build 100,000. Now that's an extra 25%. Is that the limit? An extra 25%?
No.
Okay.
We don't have anything in writing.
You don't have
If it becomes egregious where you're putting 300,000 of economic growth and 100,000 of environmental protection,
That'll flag.
yeah, that's going to flag out pretty quick. I've already had one of those go forward because it had funding from other sources. It was a fiasco because the economic growth didn't happen. And now the town's stuck with a large bill because they still have to pay back 3/4 of the money. So we'll probably be advising you well ahead of time that, let's be realistic about what you can expect.
So in other words, maybe we could push it to 150, but we better not try 200 yet. Okay.
We'll talk, like I said. I'll be here for a while. Carlos, if he shows up, will be here, and I've been training him for years. He knows what we're looking at.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for your time.
Motion to adjourn. It literally is. So moved.
Thank you very much.